Okay, so this video extensively goes over the bench press. First thing I do is I'm setting my hands to a grip width that's relative to me. So my hands are moving around a lot, but my hands are symmetrical, so that of course they always must be symmetrical on the bar. That sounds like common sense, but you'd be surprised. People unrack the bar, basically holding it on one side. And obviously, if you do that, it's going to be lopsided and tip over. So make sure your grip is always symmetrical. Every barbell ever made will have different markings on it that you can use to compare it to where you should be, where you usually are, to make sure that you're symmetrical. So the grip that you need to use is a grip that will allow your forearms to be perpendicular for about middle to bottom of the movement. We'll go over this more later. So usually it's better to err a little bit on the closer side, and that bar needs to be over your chest while you're using that grip. That's something we'll talk more about. So that's the first thing you got to do. First, set your grip so that's symmetrical and at a width that's relative to you. Next, and I'm already doing it right now, you want to squeeze your shoulder blades together and set your traps into the bench. So that's what I'm doing right now. Setting my shoulder blades and traps into the bench. I do this thing, as you can see, where I put my feet on the bench and pop my butt up. It makes it easier to lock my shoulder blades in place. You don't necessarily have to do what I'm doing right now. You can simply just squeeze your shoulder blades together and then get ready for the bar after that. So, butt and shoulder blades on the ground. Now look at what I'm doing with my feet here. So you want to tuck your feet back too. What this is doing, it's making tension in my body, kind of making this a full body exercise, which is good. You want to create that tension. It gives you more stability, which is a good thing. Right now I can kind of feel a little bit of a stretch in my hip flexors. Part of that can be because I have tight hip flexors, but also it's an indicator to let you know that you have good tension in your body. So if you're feeling some tension in the hips and core, that's good. So tuck your feet back like I am right now. Next, unrack that bar. And you want to have that bar in line with your sternum. So it's over my chest and it stays over my chest. I'm going to press up and down. It's going to stay over my chest the entire time. So it's never going to drift over my face. That should make sense. Should be fairly intuitive too. Right? What you don't want to do is press that bar up over your face. A lot of people do that. You don't want to do that because if you ever fail while you're benching, you just lower it to your chest instead of lowering it to your face or throat. So notice what I said earlier. My forearms are perpendicular to the bar right here, roughly, right? It won't be picture perfect, but you want to get it as perpendicular as you can. You're done, rack it. Okay, so this is another video going over the same things I talked about last time. So I'm getting my hands at the width I need them to. I'm setting my shoulder blades, and then I set my feet back. So I like to get on the balls of my foot because that makes it easier for me to tuck myself in and get tight for the bench. Some people might want their feet flat, which is fine as long as you're pushing into your feet and creating some tension, making it somewhat of a full body movement, then that's okay. So that's what I'll do next. I'll move my feet to a flat position. So this is how a lot of high school coaches will coach benching. They would say, get your feet flat. In some powerlifting federations, they demand your feet flat too. Most powerlifting federations demand that your feet be in contact with the ground. So if you're competing in powerlifting, this can be depending on what federation you're in. This can also be just based off comfort if you're just trying to get stronger in the gym. So again, notice how I'm bringing that bar to my sternum, right? That bar is touching my sternum. When I press up, it goes right up and down to my chest. Also notice where my elbows are. They're in line with that sternum as well, so my elbows aren't winging out. So I have that arrow shape in my body. Okay, so going back to talking about the grip. This view will do a better job showing that. So I'm setting my grip. I know where my grip is. Most barbells and most gyms, they'll have a set of rings. This barbell has 2 rings on each side because one is set for powerlifting, the other ring is for Olympic lifting. Most gyms have a powerlifting ring. And right now, I have my pinkies on that ring, which is a spot where a lot of people like to use. It's also a spot I like to use. So my pinkies are on the ring. So I'm following everything else, tucking myself in. So look, I'm halfway, well, I'm a little more than halfway. I'm almost down to my chest, so I'm in between the middle and the ending where the bar is in the middle of the path and almost to my chest. And look at my forearms. See how there's about a right angle there? 45 degrees each way, right? Like I said before, it won't be perfect, but this is the angle you want. So this is a good width for me because this is what it's allowing me to do. So if the angle was different, right, if my arms are way out here when I'm at the bottom or midway of the movement, then I'm too wide, right? There are certain situations where you want to be in a wide grip, but generally speaking, you want to be in this position where your forearms are roughly perpendicular to the bar. And usually it's a little bit better to be slightly on the closer side than it is slightly on the wider side. But there is some wiggle room there, okay? So at the top, because your arms are locked out, your arms won't be perpendicular when they're locked out. It's when they're bent and middle to the bottom of the movement that you want that perpendicular angle. That's how wide your grip needs to be. So I'll do a couple examples here soon of how not to bench press. You see that happen a lot. It looks ridiculous, and it is ridiculous. It's also dangerous. I've seen people tweak their backs because they're kicking their feet out. You got to stay tucked in. All right, we do talk about close grip bench press in one of my other videos, but this is important to consider. It's not bad to do a close grip bench press, but if you're in a close grip position, I don't want your elbows out like that. Your elbows got to be tucked in. So this is elbow flare. We talk about elbow flare. No matter what grip you have, try to avoid elbow flare when you're bench pressing. It puts a lot of bad stress on the shoulders. There, so that's really important to consider too. So this is going to be a little hard to notice. Watch what happens with my shoulder blades. You can see it. So I'm disengaging my shoulder blades, which I don't want. While you're pressing, you should always have your shoulder blades engaged. So that means they're locked together and they never separate until you're done with your bench press. So watch how I press up right there. See that? So my arms are straight. That was all scapular movement. So if you've ever benched, whether it's dumbbells or barbell, and you feel like your shoulder blade's like hanging off the side of the bench and it's really uncomfortable, so that means you're doing this, and we need to fix that. So you got to have your shoulder blades locked together. And you can even see my chest change, right? It's puffed up, which is good because that means my shoulder blades are back. Now that's disengaging the shoulder blades. So while you're pressing, you want to stay in this position the whole time, and then you bend your arms up and down from there. So don't disengage at the top. You want to keep those shoulder blades locked together. Yep, so I'm locking them back together right now, pressing up. Yep, and there's a disengage again. So keep those shoulder blades locked. All right, so this shows the side view. Does a really good job of showing how the bar should move up and down over the chest. So there I'm again setting my shoulder blades into the mat. Then I set my feet back, get nice and tight. Bring that bar to my sternum. So that bar is going to move up and down from that point. It's going to stay in line with my chest. Goes up and down. It does not drift over my face. You don't want that. All right, so look at my upper arm right here. Upper arm. Forearms roughly perpendicular to the bar, which is good. My upper arm is down at a roughly 45-degree angle, not a perfect 45-degree angle. That's how you want it. So you don't want your arms winged out to the side. You want them down at the angle so you can keep that bar in line with your chest. This is healthy shoulder movement. When your elbows wing out, it's not the greatest shoulder movement. And I will show a couple reps with improper form here. That's a good rep. So that's an example of not having perpendicular forearms. That's an example of winging there. See the difference? It's like on my upper chest. Look how wide my elbows are. So you don't want that. And even there, I brought it over my face. You don't want that either. That's what you want, straight up and down. There's that shoulder blade loosening. Keep those shoulder blades tight. All right, now that's the extensive breakdown of the bench press.